Karen let strangers hunt on my land until I showed up in a patrol vehicle. Told person by Wyatt Rhodes, 39. Widowed father, rancher, and part-time county wildlife deputy. Some people carry clipboards like they're shields. Others, they use them like weapons. Karen Davis. She used hers like a throne, but no throne stands long on stolen ground. And mine was the land she tried to rule. The mistake she made. She thought I was just another quiet neighbor. She didn't know I was also the one sent to enforce wildlife law across this entire county. Until I showed up in uniform with lights on and her name already printed on the citation. Part 1. I bought this land 10 years ago, after losing my wife to cancer. 47 acres of oak-lined woods and hilly grazing terrain tucked along the eastern edge of Lark County, Texas. I named it Quiet Ridge. Not because it was peaceful, but because I needed a place to learn how to be. How to be a father, how to be alone, how to start again. By day, I run cattle. By weekend, I put on the badge as one of 3 deputies covering wildlife violations, everything from illegal trapping to poaching calls. I do it because someone has to. These woods, they breathe, bleed, and remember. So when I saw those boot prints near the East Ridge last fall, fresh, deep, aggressive, I knew they didn't belong. Neither did the 30-06 shell casings I found beside a busted trail cam, and definitely not the blood trail leading from my property line across the ravine. I checked my posted signs. Gone, torn down, ripped clean off. Then I saw it tacked to a birch tree near the fence line, facing inward, not outward, a laminated sheet that read, Community Wildlife Recreation Area, sponsored by Wedge Hollow HOA. Permit not required. I don't live in an HOA. There is no Wedge Hollow HOA registered in this county, but I knew who used that name. Karen Davis. She lived 3 plots down in a modern cabin she didn't build, inherited from her father. She moved in 2 years ago and declared herself community steward. Her favorite phrases were, we have to preserve the spirit of order, and technically, you're part of the shared reserve. Except, I'm not. I have a deed. I pay my taxes. And I've never signed anything related to her imaginary association. But now she'd posted fake permits and invited strangers to hunt on my land. I didn't confront her first. I started where I always start evidence. I hiked the perimeter, took photos of boot prints, ATV tracks, and fake signage. I pulled game cam footage. One clip showed 3 men in camo walking in from her side of the property, holding rifles and whispering, Karen said the old guy won't care. I'm 39, old enough to stay calm, young enough to throw you off your feet if you harm what's mine. That night, I called dispatch, not as Wyatt, as Deputy Rhodes. The next morning, I suited up, patrol vehicle polished, rifle mounted in the lock rack, badge clipped, not to intimidate but to inform. I rolled down the trail road slow, past the old logging gate, and that's when I saw them. 3 men in camo, one dragging a bleeding buck, another holding a scoped rifle, all of them standing beside Karen, clipboard in hand, smiling like she was hosting a picnic. Until they saw me, blue lights, badge, and a look they couldn't mistake. Karen raised her hands like she was about to deliver a TED Talk. This is all a big misunderstanding, she said quickly. They're allowed. I authorized you can't authorize what you don't own. I cut in, voice low, steady. Then I walked over and pulled the printed permit from one hunter's pocket. Wedge Hollow HOA, logo in bold, fake seal, no state approval code. I looked at the man and asked, you know where you are? Karen said this was community-managed land, he muttered. I turned to Karen. This land has a name. It's Quiet Ridge, and you're standing on felony-level trespassing ground. Part 2. You ever see someone get caught lying and then lie harder? Louder like volume can cover up the smell of bull. That was Karen, after I caught those 3 hunters and pulled the fake permits from their pockets. She didn't shut up. She doubled down. They misunderstood what I told them. She insisted, even as I photographed her bogus Wedge Hollow HOA sign. I was simply giving them access guidance. I didn't say they could hunt. One of the hunters looked at her like she'd slapped him. Karen, you walked us through the trailhead yourself. I held up my phone already recording. Karen's face drained white. Recording without my permission is illegal, she snapped. No, ma'am, not on public record, I said, tapping my badge. And not when you're facilitating unauthorized entry onto private land. Then I looked around the clearing tire ruts. Shell casings, torn tree bark, even a gut pile left half covered under a tarp. You didn't just let people hike across my land, I said. You sanctioned slaughter. The arrest came 48 hours later. Greg, the youngest hunter, filed a statement, admitting he'd paid $100 to join the HOA's wildlife group after Karen sent him a link to a private Facebook page. That page was titled Wedge Hollow Outdoor Cooperative. She charged membership donations, posted seasonal maps, even offered discounts if people referred non-resident sportsmen. The DA pulled the page before Karen could delete it. They found 37 people on that list. 10 of them had already hunted here. None had permission. That was fraud, trespassing, wildlife code violations, and, worst of all, endangerment of minors because 2 underage boys were listed as junior members. Karen was booked and released pending trial. But here's where the real battle began. The community. See, Karen didn't just fake authority, she made believers. People who bought her brand of neighborhood stewardship, folks who thought her clipboards and laminated maps meant she was organized. Visionary. Someone who brought order to a rural space they barely understood. When news broke, some defended her. She was just trying to share nature. She didn't mean harm. Wyatt's overreacting, it's just woods. But it wasn't just woods. It was my family's resting place. My wife's ashes are buried under the oaks. It was home to the herd I raised with my hands. It was the peace I fought wars to come back to. You don't sell access to someone's healing ground and call it a community hike. So I fought back the only way I know how, with truth. I released a public statement, not angry, not aggressive, just facts. I included drone footage of ATV damage, vet reports for deer illegally wounded and left to rot, time-lapse video of the soil erosion Karen's hunters caused near the North Spring. I ended it with a photo of my wife's memorial stone bent by a tire track. The caption read, "Not everything you step on belongs to you." It went viral in the county. People started pulling back. Karen's defenders quieter. A few even emailed me apologies, and the ones still siding with her, they didn't last long, because the state stepped in next. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department launched a formal investigation. Turns out Karen had misled more than hunters. She'd lied to a state grant program, claiming she owned 60-plus acres of wildlife management land. She used that lie to secure funding for trail cameras, native seed packets, and youth education supplies. $12,000 worth, but it was my land, and her youth education program didn't exist. And that's when her case stopped being about trespassing and became about fraud at scale. Part 3. Courtrooms have a sound I'll never forget. It's not the gavel. It's not the shuffling of paper or the judge's voice. It's the moment the truth hits, when people stop breathing, when the room turns still, and the lie that held everything together finally snaps. Karen's trial had that moment, and it broke the room in half. She was charged with trespassing conspiracy, wildlife endangerment, unauthorized use of private land, fraudulent misrepresentation, misuse of state funds, endangerment of minors, and the cherry on top, impersonation of a regulatory body, because she'd created fake email headers from a non-existent Wedge Hollow Wildlife Authority, complete with a mock logo that mimicked the seal of the actual Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. The state brought in their legal team. Karen brought in a polished man in a suit who specialized in HOA defense. He argued Karen had good intentions, that she merely filled a gap in rural stewardship, that the hunting activity was voluntary, and that the land had ambiguous boundaries. That last line made me laugh out loud. In court, "Mr. Rhodes," the judge said, "is something funny." I stood. Only the idea that a woman who tore down my fence, removed posted no trespassing signs, and sold access to my wife's burial site is somehow confused about boundaries. Gasps across the room. The judge blinked once, nodded slowly, and said, "Noted." Then came the turning point. They brought in Greg, the young hunter who had testified earlier. He sat stiff in the witness box, sweating. He looked at Karen once and then stared straight ahead. "She said I didn't need a license," he said, voice cracking, "that the land was community trust. She charged me $100 to join her program, told me I'd have priority for buck season." "What did you hunt that day?" the prosecutor asked. He lowered his eyes. "A whitetail. Big one." "And where was it shot?" He swallowed. "Under an oak tree, near a flat stone. Said not to move anything near it." The courtroom turned cold. That flat stone was my wife's memorial marker. Karen had told hunters not to disturb it, which meant she knew it was there, knew she was selling land that didn't belong to her, and knew the harm she was causing. The prosecutor paused, then put up a screen with a line from Karen's own email to a paying hunter. "Don't mind the old guy if he shows up. He's not law enforcement, he's just emotional." The courtroom erupted. I didn't react. I didn't have to, because the truth had finally burned loud enough to drown her lies. The jury deliberated only 6 hours. Karen was found guilty on all counts, but the judge wasn't done. Before sentencing, he turned to me. "Mr. Rhodes, as the primary victim in this case, the court would like your input on sentencing preference. I didn't want revenge, but I did want accountability. So I asked for 3 things. Full restitution for land damage and wildlife violations, a formal retraction and public apology published in county papers, mandatory public education service, a court-ordered speaking program where Karen would have to read the names of every illegally killed animal, describe their condition, and explain what wildlife law she helped violate." The courtroom froze. The judge nodded. "Approved." Karen was sentenced to 7 years, with 2 years suspended, and the rest under strict monitored probation plus mandatory weekly service to the County Wildlife Restoration Fund. But her real punishment came that Sunday. She stood at the town square gazebo, court-mandated microphone in hand, and read aloud from a stack of cards: whitetail buck, shot illegally, 4-point rack, dragged across private land, gut pile left exposed, cottontail rabbit, killed by unauthorized snare, found decomposed near oak tree line, juvenile deer, gunshot through spine, bled out 200 yards from memorial stone. People watched, not with hate, with consequence. She cried halfway through, but she kept reading, because some lessons can't be felt until the whole town hears the truth in your voice. Part 4. Some wounds don't bleed. They grow quiet. They settle deep, under the skin of a place, in the memory of trees, in the way animals tense when they cross old scars. That was Quiet Ridge after Karen's conviction. The land wasn't just mine again, it was wounded. And like any injured thing, it needed time and trust. The deer didn't come back right away. The water near the ravine stayed cloudy for weeks from the blood runoff. Birds nested further away than usual. My son, Caleb, just 12, wouldn't even step near the trailhead where Karen's hunters used to enter. Said the air there felt angry. He wasn't wrong, so we didn't force it. We cleaned what we could, burned sagebrush, replaced the signs, rebuilt the fence with neighbors who showed up uninvited but not unwelcome. It took a month before Caleb followed me out there again. We planted 3 new oaks beside his mama's stone. He didn't say much, but I saw the way he touched the soil slow, reverent. It was the first time he'd smiled since the trial. Karen's sentence turned into something no one expected. Her court-mandated wildlife apology tour drew attention from local schools, nonprofits, and even a Texas-based wildlife advocacy group. Some wanted her punished harder. Others wanted to help repair the damage she'd caused. That's when something strange happened. People started stepping forward not to defend her, but to reclaim what she'd faked. A woman named Jenna, used to be a science teacher, called me out of the blue, said she heard about Quiet Ridge and wanted to help set up a real wildlife education program, one without lies, one with permits, one rooted in respect, not power. I didn't say yes right away. But when she brought her class out to plant milkweed and patch up a shredded trail with Caleb, I figured maybe healing wasn't just for the land. Maybe it was for all of us. One afternoon in April, something happened that told me the ridge was finally turning a corner. I heard hooves, looked up and saw 3 whitetails, 2 does, and a young buck just standing at the edge of the clearing near the tree line. They stared at me, not in fear, in recognition. They'd been here before. They'd seen what happened. They knew where not to go, but they came back anyway. Caleb saw them too, froze in his tracks, hand full of seed. "You think they remember?" he whispered. I nodded. I think they forgave. That night, I walked the perimeter, checked the new signs: private property, wildlife protected, entry by invite only, each one hand-painted by Caleb. Near the west line, I stopped and added one more: not your rules, not your land, still our home. Nailed it in with 3 firm hits, and left it there just high enough for any hunter to see, and just low enough for a child to read. Karen still reads names on Sundays. Every week, the list grows shorter. She keeps her head down now. No more podcasts, no more clipboards. I don't hate her, but I don't miss her either. Some people don't deserve your rage, just your distance. Call to action, final reflection. Can a community heal from betrayal when nature's involved? Does true stewardship come from titles or actions? And more importantly, how do you defend peace without becoming the aggressor? Share your thoughts. Let's talk about land, legacy, and the people who think they own both.